So I assigned you You Were Never Really Here, Lynn Ramsey's 2017 festival release, 2018 wide release in the United States, starring Joaquin Phoenix. This movie is about a former soldier, government agent of some kind, a very traumatized guy who now lives with and takes care of his mother and hunts down child trafficking rings very, very brutally. I saw this during the pandemic for the first time. I didn't see it in theaters. I thought it was wonderful. Really taut, short, to the point portrayal of trauma and the legacy that leaves on people and what it causes them to do to other people. I saw your Letterboxd review. It was 3.5 stars. And on your scale, that's like a 0. So
That's a little exaggerating.
well, tell me what you thought about it.
I liked this movie. I didn't dislike this movie. I don't think you're going to have to defend it too hard because I think there's a lot to like about this movie. I think, atmospherically it's really good. And I will preface this too as saying I was excited to watch this. I was glad that you recommended it because it was just, one that for whatever reason slipped past me. I had wanted to see it. I liked the one other Lynn Ramsey movie I'd seen was We Need to Talk About Kevin, which I thought was very good. I haven't seen it since it came out, so I don't have super strong memories of it, but I do remember it being very good. I remember Tilda Swinton being very good in it. I remember thinking, boy, that Ezra Miller is going to be a big, big star, which turned out to be true for a little while. So, I had fond memories of that, and I was excited to watch this movie, and I think this movie is good. I think Joaquin Phoenix is really, really good in it, as he is in everything, and you described him, as a tortured individual, which Joaquin Phoenix movie does that not describe? That's pretty evergreen statement for most of his films. So I was into this, and I like Joaquin Phoenix, and I like a majority of the movies he's in. I think generally he picks pretty good projects. So I think this was a good movie. There was just something that I didn't connect with it on an emotional level. There was nothing for me beyond just the appreciation of the technique and the skill that was obvious in the making of, and the acting of the film. But there wasn't anything about the characters that really pulled me in, unfortunately. And I really wanted there to be. And I don't know, maybe I had a different expectation, or maybe it just I watched it in the wrong mood or something. There's all kinds of things that can be in play movies here, but I certainly don't think it's a bad movie by any means. Not at all. 3.5 stars is not a 0. That's not true. But yeah, there was just something that held me back from from really engaging with this movie.
I'm sure I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but I've seen it said that 3.5 stars on Letterboxd is what you put when you didn't like the movie, but you feel like you were supposed to like the movie. So I think it's a 5-star film. I appreciate what you're saying because I feel that way. It's funny because the roles are kind of reversed. This happens with us a lot the other way, where you're really excited about something. I'm actually pretty stoked to watch it. And then I'm like, it just didn't quite hit what I wanted it to hit in me. This did for me. I can't say anything like resonated on a personal level because I've never had any kind of experiences like this. I've never been trafficked, thankfully, known anyone who's been trafficked, nor have I been a vigilante. But look, you mentioned the craft of the movie. I think spot on. It's really well put together. All 4 of Ramsey's feature films, I've seen them all now.
Yeah, let's talk more about those in a little bit. I'd like to hear more about her other 2.
For sure. There's a lot that runs through all of them. Like there are thematic pieces in Ratcatcher that run through this actually, and Morver, I'm going to say her name wrong. Yeah. Her second feature is the main character's name, Morvern Callard, but people get it wrong in the movie, and I'm going to get it wrong in saying the movie. Samantha Morton's character, Morvern Callard, she's also post-traumatic in that movie. That film starts with her partner having committed suicide, and then the rest of the movie is how she responds to that. Ratcatcher is about a young, very impoverished Scottish boy who starts the movie by witnessing and perhaps in part causing the death of a friend of his. And the rest of the movie is like his guilt played out as the rest of his life, I don't want to say falls apart, but as he waits for his life to move on while his family is being rehoused from one housing project to another. His father's quite abusive. We Need to Talk About Kevin, which you've seen, is a brutal look at a school shooting, not gun violence, which I think is actually the downfall of that movie, but intense violence from a young man who is in the mold of all these school shooters that we see all the time, and what raising a boy who was so disturbed does to his mother before and after the incident. And then this movie where Phoenix has clearly been abused his whole life, and his mother was abused, and now they're trauma bonded. They have that connection with each other, but Phoenix's character is always thinking about, remembering, and sort of quietly reenacting his childhood trauma while he murders people in the pursuit of saving young girls from pedophiles. For me, this is far and away her best movie. I waited a long, long time to watch We Need to Talk About Kevin. I never wanted to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. I find school, well, I do know why, because it's disturbing, but I really avoid school shooting movies more than others. Like I didn't want to watch Villeneuve's Polytechnique for a long time. And then when I watched it, I wasn't so impressed with it. And I can't say I wasn't impressed with We Need to Talk About Kevin. I was impressed with it. But I thought that the final few scenes really let the movie down. Like showing Kevin shooting the bow and arrow over and over and over again, but not the victims. I appreciated not seeing the victims, but on the other hand, it just sort of made him shooting the bow and arrow look silly. I don't think that the climax of a school shooting movie should look silly. So that didn't work for me. But anyway, we're getting pretty far away from a lot of this. So it's the trauma that runs through all of these movies, and I think it worked best in You Were Never Really Here, followed by maybe Morvern Caller, which is almost like a sequel. You could argue it's a sequel to Ratcatcher, because the man who is dead at the beginning of Morvern Caller has the same name as the little boy who's the main character of Ratcatcher. It takes place 20 some odd years later, because Ratcatcher takes place in the 70s. And there's a question of whether or not that little boy dies at the end of Ratcatcher, but you could argue he didn't. And then he's dead at the beginning of the next movie.
Sure.
To me, it's Ramsey at her best. I've been rambling. Tell me about how you saw this, pros, cons versus We Need to Talk About Kevin.
Well, it's going to be hard for me to compare with We Need to Talk About Kevin, just because it's been, it was 2011 or 12 when it came out, and I haven't seen it since then. So it's been a very, very long time. But, and just in terms of the performances, I mean, nobody can do trauma quite like, Joaquin Phoenix kind of has the market cornered on these, very tortured, traumatized characters. This is what he excels at. I mean, the description that you gave of the character, traumatized, lives with his mother, who's also traumatized. I mean, you described Joker, basically, which came out a couple years after this, in which he, finally won his Oscar for. And I think this, kind of describes a lot of his other characters too, that have been, traumatized in very, very different ways. You can even look at movies that he's been in, like Quills. Have you ever seen Quills?
Never did it. And also, it's funny, the first person who ever described Quills to me was my mother. So there's something like icky about all that in my head. So
yeah, I can see that. If you can ever get past that, Quills is a great movie, and Joaquin is just out of this world in it, and I feel like it's kind of one of his forgotten performances. But yeah, I mean, he's doing great work in this movie. There's just no doubt about that. But again, in this movie, for me, it was the ending that just, I don't know, it just didn't, I don't want to say if it didn't work for me, but again, it just didn't, there was nothing that, it just didn't make me feel anything. I mean, I have a kid who, obviously, I have no experience with any sort of trafficking, no connection to any sort of trafficking. I've never been a vigilante either. And, if we were, not like we would admit it here, but, so like I have a kid. So, I mean, you think movies like this maybe would speak to me a little bit more. And then maybe that's why I was surprised that it didn't. But even, at the end of this movie, which, standard spoiler alert, we spoil most of the movies we talk about if you don't want to know, like, what happened at the end, but he saves a child. He saves the governor's daughter, who he was going to save.
State senator's daughter. The governor was the one who was targeting her.
Right. So he saves the daughter, and they are going to go somewhere. They're going to go somewhere together. And maybe it was just the ambiguity of it. When he pictures his own suicide, there was just something about, there was a disconnect in that for me, and I think that's what maybe dropped it down from a 3.5 to a 4, or from a 4 to a 3.5 for me, was that ending where he pictured the suicide. It was like, I know he's traumatized and all of that, but like, finally by the end, like, couldn't he get, wasn't he getting some kind of catharsis by saving this, by saving this girl, and by, doing the thing that he'd been set out to do? So I don't know, maybe that was the disconnect for me, because I was, really into the story. And like I said, it's short, it doesn't waste any time. I love movies like that, where there's just not a lot of extraneous dialogue. I'm super into that. I thought that was cool. So I think it was that ending that kind of, dropped the half star for me.
Okay, so I'm going to go on defense a little bit here, just because
because I want to hear it. I want to hear another take.
I really like the ending. And I think the way you brought it up is the perfect way to start talking about it, because I don't want to say there's no catharsis, but the ending is definitely making it clear that he's not fixed because he saved this girl. His trauma is deep-seated. It's going to last his whole life, however long or short that may be. He tries to kill himself multiple times throughout the movie. There's a great scene in the middle. The thing that Ramsey does that I love so much is she does these otherworldly sort of avant-garde moments in her movies, but the movies still remain rooted in reality. So they're different than like Beau is Afraid, for example, another traumatized Joaquin Phoenix movie, where huge chunks of the movie are unreal, including the ending, and like a 30-minute animated piece. I think that movie's super cool, but this one is more rooted in reality. Another spoiler, His mother is murdered by some of the governor's hitmen, henchmen, whatever. He goes to bury her at sea in a pond. And when he puts her in the water to sink, he puts rocks in his clothes so that he'll sink too. And there's this great moment where he's sinking. You think he's finally going to have some peace, but then he sees the girl and knows that she's still in trouble. And he's like, I can't kill myself yet. I think the restaurant scene, the diner scene at the end is sort of the reverse of that, where he has saved her now. She asks where they're going to go. He says he doesn't know where. He says they can go wherever she wants. She says she doesn't know. And then it seems like maybe she's frustrated. She gets up, she walks away. And he's thinking, well, it doesn't seem like she needs me, but I've saved her and now I can kill myself. Mm-hmm. So he has this fantasy where he kills himself and no one around him cares, which is what he wants, right?
Right.
He couldn't kill himself while his mom was alive because she needed him.
Yep.
As soon as she died, he could, but then remembered, nope, someone else needs me. So he didn't. And now this girl seemingly doesn't need me and no one will care. It's still, he's having this fantasy, but then she comes back from presumably the bathroom, says it's a beautiful day, which is the name of the movie in France.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Oh. And this is a British-French movie. So if you look it up on Roku, even if you say into Roku, I want to watch You Were Never Really Here, the thumbnail comes up and it says, A Beautiful Day.
Interesting.
So he's not free of his commitments. So now his life has to go back to how it was. And in a very mundane way, he puts his straw in his mouth and takes a very slurpy sip of his drink and then hard cut to black. To me, that was great. It's like he's trapped. He still has to live his life. Like, who knows what his future is? I doubt he raises this girl. Mm-hmm. But we have seen, you said he saves her. He didn't really save her. She killed the governor. And he just showed up.
Right. He got her out of there at least. He did a part. He did.
Right. Yeah. So in the beginning of the movie, or in the middle of the movie, right at the top of Act 2, he saves her from basically like a whorehouse where she is and all these other kids are the prostitutes. He tells her to close her eyes while he kills the people in the house. Not the kids, but the security guards and the other men who are preying on these girls. She watches. And then I don't think it's a coincidence that after that, she commits her first murder.
Right.
She's sort of becoming him in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that it gives you a lot to chew on. And what I love about Ramsey movies, too, is there's not a lot of dialogue in these movies. So except for his handler who totally McBains himself by literally saying, let's go out on my boat and ride into the sunset 2 scenes before he's murdered.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really like that. I like that you can think of this going in a lot of different directions going forward. Mm-hmm. And Lynn Ramsey's not making sequels aside from her pseudo sequel to Ratcatcher. Yeah. So that can always just be like whatever we make of it. And I really love that. And it's funny because we need to talk about Kevin. I think its big drawback, it's her only movie that goes beyond 90 minutes. It's like 2 hours and a little bit of change. And for me, I was like, we get it.
Yeah.
Raising him is hard. Raising him is torture. But like, do we have to feel tortured? That was the point. Mm-hmm. But it's just not what I wanted in that movie as much. I still think it's a good movie, but
yeah. I mean, when was the last time Tilda Swinton was in a bad movie? Like, are there too many?
It probably happens just because she's in every movie.
Right.
Say one more thing before we move on. Yesterday, you also texted me and asked, why do conservatives get all gussied up for Sound of Freedom, but not for this movie? And I had like a knee-jerk answer, but I'd never seen Sound of Freedom, so I couldn't say for sure.
And I haven't seen it either, just for conversation purposes.
Right. But I did watch it today, so I could have this conversation with you. And I just want to give you my findings. So first, before I even get into that, you mentioned Joker. I like You Were Never Really Here. So I said to you when you first mentioned that you'd watch it, I said, this is my Joker. You said you were surprised I give it 5 stars. I'm like, no, this is my Joker. I don't think Joker's that good. This is like what everything Joker should be.
But Joker was the last movie we saw in theaters together.
I know. And I cherish it for that reason, but I also fell asleep in the theater.
That's right.
Sitting next to you.
That was the first night you met my wife, too.
True story.
Who was not my wife then, but, you know.
Yeah. But as far as like disturbed veterans or mental patients who save a little girl, this is the better Taxi Driver. Okay, so Sound of Freedom. It's interesting. You Were Never Really Here has all the makings of a movie where conservatives would get hyped up about it because these are government officials. Really, the machine is doing the sex trafficking of little kids. They don't say what party, so it's not easy to be like, oh, it's the Democrats. Although the governor does sort of feel like a Cuomo analog to me as someone who's lived in New York for a long time, or the New York area at this point, but it's never explicitly said. The reason I said to you yesterday, and I still believe this, why I think they don't get into it is because Joaquin Phoenix is a loser. He lives in a crappy house with his whiny mom. He's ugly, fat, long hair, disheveled. He looks like an incel. No one wants to fantasize themselves looking like that. I watched Sound of Freedom. Now, the guy that Sound of Freedom is based on, I forget his name, he's a really handsome guy. And Jim Caviezel is a really handsome guy.
He's also Jesus.
He's quite literally Jesus. Has the same initials and played him in a movie.
Mm-hmm.
He has no faults in the movie. He's not like the greatest person who ever lived, but he never second guesses himself. Everything he asks for, he gets almost immediately. Kurt Fuller plays his boss, even when and I love Kurt Fuller, like Wayne's World for life.
Yeah.
Whenever Kurt Fuller has to say no to him, he either immediately reverses course and says yes, or someone else comes along and helps Jim Caviezel figure out what he needs. So he's just like, it's ultra competence. He has almost no real obstacles in the movie. He's basically Superman. It's just much more appealing to think of the fight against sex trafficking as being that, right? It's not going to happen right away, but eventually the good guys will win. Whereas in You Were Never Really Here, he still wants to kill himself at the end of the movie. That's not aspirational.
Yeah.
The weird thing is, Sound of Freedom has no politics. It's not big bad government that's doing all this pedophilia and sex trafficking. It's just like random criminals and rebels in Colombia. So I guess you could otherize it and say, yeah, because it's Hispanic people, that's easier for conservatives to wrap, at least modern conservatives, to wrap their minds around.
Right.
But it doesn't let you blame the libs. So I didn't really get that. And it made me think that maybe the studio planted these stories about it being a conservative movie, because there's nothing all that conservative about the movie. It's just kind of boring.
And that really surprises me. Like, I just kind of assumed there would be that kind of slant to it because that's all we heard about, and all the, theaters are canceling showtimes of it because they don't want, they don't want the conservative groups to see it. That literally happened in my town. Like, I live in a small town, and it was a person, and it wasn't a bot, because it was a person whose name I knew, who was friends with friends of mine who spread one of those, like, we tried to go see it at the Gaylord Cinema and it was canceled because of this and that. And it was like a whole long post, like they're trying to get us not to see it because of it was a whole thing. And I'm just so shocked that there was no like political slant on the movie at all, because that's everything I expected.
None at all. To me, it just strikes as like, this is a great, like your buddy or your friend of a friend who posted that long post, they did viral marketing for that movie. Like more people probably saw it based on that post who wouldn't have otherwise, because I know you live in a very conservative area. It's not a conservative movie. In fact, it's like a real easy watch. I gave it 2.5 stars. It's not bad. It's well shot. There's some like wonky CGI at the beginning and the end, but who cares? It's well edited. Caviezel is really the only problem with it acting wise. Bill Camp's quite good in it, in his sort of hamming it up kind of way. Like I said, Kurt Fuller is good. Most of the side characters are good. Mira Sorvino has absolutely nothing to do. It's weird she was in it. Yeah, I don't know. It's much more of a nothing movie than a bad movie.